Hey everybody. This is a quick video to answer a few questions I've gotten about what's known as double grouping or grouping something twice or more than twice. The first thing that I do when I receive one of your assignments is I first look at it just to make sure that it looks the way it's supposed to. Then I go through and I open everything up by double clicking on it using my select tool. And that way I can see that everything is grouped properly. In this case, this is just an anonymous example where I noticed that some of the objects were grouped twice, and there were some questions about how this happens and how to avoid it and what to do about it. Let me just demonstrate by showing you this first 2D shape that we have here. You'll notice when I click on something using my select tool, just click on it once, I can see already that it's a group because the entire object is highlighted with a blue bounding box. Now, if I want to open this up, open the group up, I should say, I would double click on it using my left click on my mouse, and that will show me a dotted, dashed, kind of exploded looking box or open box, and everything else in the screen goes gray or faded. So I now know that I'm working within an open group and I'm working on just this piece separate from all of this. If I select it again, notice just by clicking on it once that the box itself is, or the shape I should say, the rectangle is highlighted in blue again. What I should have is the ability to click on individual lines and the face. This tells me right away that I have another group sitting inside a group. Think of this kind of as like a nesting doll. You've got these series of groups that protect over and over again, but you really only need to group an individual piece like this once. So if I double click on this again, I now have this, now I can click on individual lines and faces and select it in different ways as if it was a raw piece of geometry. To get out of this, I can click out in space, and you'll see that when I click out in space, again, I'm still within this group. So I've got this thing grouped twice. The best thing to do to solve this problem is to right click on it and go to explode. And what this is going to do is that's just going to undo the grouping. So now that I've exploded it, it's the way it should be, which is where if I click out in space, it closes. If I click on it, it's still grouped. If I double click on it, it opens up, and now I've got individual raw elements that I can work on. And if I were to activate my push-pull, the push-pull will work. Let me hit escape here and undo that. Let me Apple Z this a couple times, take it back to its original state. Notice that if I go back to where I was before, where when I double click on this to open it up and it's still grouped, now when I go to push-pull, I would think that intuitively I would think that I'd be able to push-pull and edit this, but I can't because it's a closed group sitting inside of a group. Okay? So if I look at this shape as well, what's happened is this was copied and brought over and then opened up twice and grouped. Well, it was already grouped twice, so it was probably opened up and then opened up again, and then that shape was edited and brought up and push-pull and then closed. You have to kind of close it twice in order to get out of it. So if I look at this by opening it up and I select it again, you can see that I've got a group sitting inside of a group. And because these are all copies, that's going to happen as you go down the line. This is an interesting situation where when I click on this one, you'll notice that the whole thing is grouped, and you can see that because it's got a little bounding box blue highlight around it. When I open it up and select it again, this box here is grouped, but the line that was drawn on top of it is sitting on top of a closed group. So this line is not going to interact with this at all because this is a closed group, and it's only going to be editable if I open it up. So I can only draw the line on the top to have it divide the faces once it's opened. So because this is a group sitting inside of a group, I know it's a little confusing, but because it's a group sitting inside of a group, it's not editable unless I open it up again. The best way to fix this would be to right click on it again and explode, and you'll see immediately that that line now has no choice but to interact with that face. And you can see now that I can divide that face equally. So if you ever run into this, and this happens all the time, where you group things together more than you need to, all you have to do is double click on it, select the group inside, right click, explode, and now it's as if it's just one simple group. We'll get into grouping things together a little bit later on as it gets a little more complicated, because sometimes you're going to want things, sometimes you'll want lots of objects like these grouped together where you can select the whole thing, right click, make group, and now you've got a group. And the reason it's showing this the group being this big is because I've got some guides here. So I'm going to go to edit, delete guides, and now it's going to make my bounding box simply this. So now what I've done is I've grouped these 4 individual groups into one larger group. You always want to think micro to macro. So if you're doing something like a table, you will build the table top, or legs, is however you want to start. So you'll first start by making a shape, selecting it, right-clicking to making it a group, double-clicking it to open it up, and then going to push-pull. Go ahead and choose my select tool to close it. Now I've got my tabletop by itself. Now let's say I want to, and I'm not going to measure this, I'm just doing this for the quick purpose of this demonstration, but let's say now I want to make a table leg. So this table leg is, or the beginning of this table leg is independent of the tabletop, and it's sitting on top of the group itself. So I'm going to select that by itself by double-clicking, right-click on that, and make it a group. Now I will double-click on it to open it up. I'll go to my push-pull tool and just push-pull it kind of arbitrarily up in space, close the group. Now I'll copy this, and I want this one table leg to be its own piece, because think about how you'd actually build it. You'd actually use one piece, or maybe multiple pieces, but in this case, since it's really simple, we just use one piece of lumber or one piece of wood or whatever material it is. Now I'm going to copy this by going to my move tool, clicking, notice I click on the corner, and I'm going to hit my Alt, Option, or Control button, depending on which platform I'm working on. Hold Shift down so I can drag it along the green, and then click once more to let it go with my left click. I'm going to repeat this with both legs. So I'm going to hold my Shift down while I go to my Select tool, and I'm going to select this by clicking once with my left click. Now I'm going to go back to my Move tool, click on the end point of this leg that's closest to us, hit my Copy button again, hold Shift down, and move it out along the red axis. And I'm not measuring exactly. If I was really building a real table, I would measure all of this stuff. But for the purpose of this, I'm just going to go ahead and click it right there. Now, I'm going to select the whole thing. So I've got group, 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 group. And again, I can open any of these up and edit them by double-clicking on them. In reality, I would ultimately make these components, but we haven't really gotten into components yet, so I don't want to worry about that, because one day you'll want things like table legs and chairs and all that to be things that when you edit one, you edit them all. But for now, we're just really worried about groups. So now I'm going to select the whole thing, and I'm going to right-click, Make Group. So I want this whole table to be a group by itself. Let me go ahead and rotate it so it's right side up. So I'll hold my Rotate tool along the green axis, click once to start and once to stop. So now I want this table to be a group by itself. And someday I might add some chairs to this and then select all of those and group that together. So you can see that you're really in control of the hierarchy of how you group things. But ultimately, when you open things up, you still want everything to be their own little groups. And this will become a lot clearer as we get into our assignments down the road. But again, if I were to open this up and select the entire thing again and right-click Make Group, again, it's going to group this within a group, and that's kind of unnecessary because I already have it grouped. So if I were to close this, select it, then open it, and then select it again, you can see that it's grouped twice. The quickest fix for this, again, is always just right-click on that group that you don't want grouped, and you go to Explode. So I hope this clears things up, and yeah, thank you very much.